Right now, while you're watching this video, you're creating value for someone else. Every click, every like, every comment trains an algorithm that makes billions for tech companies while you get nothing. This isn't conspiracy theory. It's the new economic reality. The AI revolution promised to democratize knowledge and opportunity, but it's actually doing the opposite. It's concentrating wealth faster than any technology in human history. And here's the kicker. You're not just a consumer anymore. You're the product, the worker, and the training data, all rolled into one. Let me show you how deep this really goes. We've all heard the promises. AI will cure diseases, solve climate change, free us from boring jobs, and give us more time to be human. And you know what? Some of that might actually happen. But there's another story unfolding right now that nobody's really talking about in plain language, the story of who owns the AI revolution and who's just living in it. Think back to the Industrial Revolution for a second. It created unprecedented wealth and transformed society completely. But that wealth didn't spread evenly. It created a new class of industrialists, Rockefeller, Carnegie, Vanderbilt, who owned the factories, the railroads, the oil fields. And then there was everyone else, the workers who made it all run. The same pattern is happening again, but it's more invisible and more powerful. The AI revolution is creating a new aristocracy of data owners, companies that control the algorithms, the computing power, and most importantly, the data. And then there's the rest of us. We're not just consumers anymore. We're unpaid data laborers, feeding the machine with every search, every post, every interaction. The difference is, factory workers in the 1800s knew they were workers. They could organize, strike, demand fair wages. But today, most people don't even realize they're working. They think they're just using free services. This isn't about being anti-technology or anti-progress. This is about understanding what's really happening so we can shape it into something fair. So let's pull back the curtain. Before we dive deeper, I want to hear from you. Do you think AI is making economic inequality better or worse? Are you optimistic or concerned about where this is heading? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's get a real conversation going. And if you want more content that cuts through the hype and gets to the truth about technology and society, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Now, let's get into the real story. Here's something most people don't realize. Data is now more valuable than oil. That's not just a catchy metaphor. It's literally true. The world's most valuable companies aren't oil companies anymore. They're data companies. Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Meta, their entire business model is built on collecting, analyzing, and monetizing data. Your data, my data, everyone's data. But here's the critical difference between the oil economy and the data economy. When oil companies extracted oil, they had to pay for drilling rights, equipment, workers, transportation. There were real costs. The data economy is different. Tech companies have convinced us to give them the raw material, our data, completely free. We hand it over willingly, happily even, because we get to use Instagram or Google Maps or ChatGPT. It feels like a fair trade, right? Free services in exchange for some data? Except it's not even remotely fair when you look at the numbers. Meta made over $130 billion in revenue in 2023. Google's parent company Alphabet made over $300 billion. These aren't just big numbers. They represent the monetization of human behavior at a scale never before possible in history. Every photo you upload, every message you send, every place you visit with your phone, it's all being captured, analyzed, and turned into predictive models that advertisers pay billions to access. And here's where AI supercharges everything. Traditional data collection was valuable, but AI takes it to another level entirely. Machine learning algorithms can find patterns in human behavior that no human analyst ever could. They can predict what you'll buy before you know you want it, what content will keep you scrolling for hours, even how you're feeling based on your typing patterns or the time you spend looking at certain images. This isn't science fiction. This is happening right now in the background every single day. Now think about who benefits from this system. When AI gets better at predicting human behavior, do you get a cut of the increased revenue? Do you get paid for the years of data you've contributed that made these algorithms possible? Of course not. You get the same free service you always got, while the value you created flows upward to shareholders, executives, and investors. The parallel to historical extraction economies is almost perfect. During colonialism, European powers extracted resources from other continents: gold, rubber, spices, labor. And the wealth flowed back to Europe. The places being extracted from remained poor. Today, we're all colonies in the data economy. Our attention, our behavior, our social connections, these are the resources being extracted. And just like historical colonialism, the people being extracted from rarely see the wealth they generate. But there's something even more insidious happening. These companies don't just own the data, they own the infrastructure that processes it. They own the massive data centers, the specialized AI chips, the cloud computing networks. This creates a barrier to entry so high that almost nobody can compete. If you wanted to build a competitor to ChatGPT or Google search, you'd need billions of dollars just to get started. You'd need access to data that existing companies have been collecting for decades. You'd need computing power that only a handful of companies in the world can provide. This concentration of ownership means that the AI revolution is actually increasing economic inequality, not decreasing it. A tiny number of companies are capturing almost all of the economic value created by AI, while the billions of people who generate the data that makes AI possible receive essentially nothing. The rich aren't just getting richer. They're getting richer using a resource that belongs to all of us, but that we've somehow agreed to give away for free. And this brings us to an uncomfortable question. If data is the new oil, and if our data is making a few companies unimaginably wealthy, shouldn't we have some ownership stake in that wealth? Shouldn't there be some kind of data dividend, the way Alaska pays citizens a share of oil revenues? These aren't radical ideas, they're basic fairness, but they're not even part of the mainstream conversation yet. And there's a reason for that, which we'll get to next. Let's talk about something that sounds crazy at first but becomes obvious once you see it. You're working for tech companies right now, and you're not getting paid. In fact, most of us spend hours every day doing unpaid labor for some of the richest corporations in human history, and we call it leisure time. Think about what you do when you scroll through social media. You're not just passively consuming content, you're actively creating value. Every post you like tells the algorithm what content resonates. Every video you watch all the way through teaches it what keeps people engaged. Every comment you leave, every share you make, every second you spend hovering over an image, all of it is training data. You're essentially doing the work that used to require paid data analysts and user experience researchers. Except you're doing it for free, and at a scale no paid workforce could ever match. This is what I call the algorithm economy, an economic system where user behavior is the input and corporate profit is the output, with no wages in between. Facebook has billions of users constantly training its recommendation algorithms. YouTube's AI learns from billions of hours of watch history. TikTok's algorithm is so good at predicting what you want to see that people joke about it reading their minds. But it's not magic. It's just millions of users teaching it exactly what works on human psychology. And here's where it gets darker. These algorithms aren't just learning what we like. They're learning how to manipulate us. They're optimized for engagement, which is a polite way of saying they're optimized to keep us scrolling, clicking, watching, regardless of whether it's good for us. The algorithms have learned that outrage gets engagement, that fear gets engagement, that comparison and envy get engagement. So that's what they show us over and over because that's what we've trained them to do through our behavior. But unlike traditional jobs, we can't organize for better conditions. We can't demand overtime pay for the hours we spend training these systems. We can't strike. We can't even really quit because these platforms have made themselves essential to modern life. Try functioning in 2025 without a smartphone, without Google, without any social media. For most people, it's nearly impossible. We're locked into a system that extracts value from us and gives us no say in how that value is distributed. Now, tech companies will say we're getting value in return. Free services, entertainment, connection with friends. And sure, there's value there. But let's be honest about the exchange rate. You give Meta your attention, your data, your social connections, your photos, your interests, your location, your contacts, your patterns of behavior. In return, you get to see posts from your friends mixed in with ads and algorithmically selected content designed to keep you engaged for as long as possible. Is that really a fair trade? Would you agree to that deal if it was spelled out clearly up front? Here's another layer most people miss. We're not just training these algorithms for today, we're training them to replace us tomorrow. Every time customer service gets a little better at handling your problem, that's because millions of people have taught the AI how humans ask questions and what good answers look like. Every time an AI writes something that sounds almost human, that's because it learned from billions of examples of actual human writing. We're literally training our own replacements, and we're doing it for free. The gig economy gets a lot of attention for creating precarious work situations. Uber drivers, DoorDash delivery people, TaskRabbit workers doing piecemeal labor without benefits or security. But at least those workers know they're workers, and they get paid something, even if it's not enough. The algorithm economy is even more exploitative because most people don't even recognize they're doing labor. They think they're just using an app. This matters because it's reshaping fundamental ideas about work, value, and compensation. If billions of people are creating enormous economic value through their daily activities but receiving no direct compensation, then we need new frameworks for thinking about fairness and distribution in the economy. We need to start asking who deserves to profit from AI and why. There's a reason the same handful of companies dominate every AI breakthrough, and it's not just because they're smarter than everyone else. It's because AI has what economists call increasing returns to scale. The more data you have, the better your AI gets, which attracts more users, which gives you more data, which makes your AI even better. It's a self-reinforcing cycle that naturally concentrates power in the hands of whoever gets there first. Think about search engines. Google became dominant not because it was the only search engine, but because it had more searches than anyone else, which meant more data about what results people found useful, which meant better search results, which meant even more people using Google. Now they're so far ahead that nobody can realistically compete. Microsoft has spent billions trying to challenge Google's search dominance, and they've barely made a dent. That's the power of the data feedback loop. This same dynamic is playing out across every AI-powered industry. Amazon knows more about shopping behavior than any retailer in history, which makes its recommendations better, which drives more sales, which gives it more data. Netflix knows what people want to watch before they do. Spotify knows what music you'll like. These companies aren't just successful. They're becoming monopolies not through force, but through the natural dynamics of AI-powered markets. And here's the really important part. This concentration of power happens faster with AI than with any previous technology. The Industrial Revolution took generations to fully reshape the economy. The internet took decades. AI is doing it in years. We're watching the emergence of AI-powered monopolies in real time, and the window for competition is closing faster than regulators can even understand what's happening. But it's not just about competing companies. It's about entire countries. Right now, the United States and China are in an AI arms race, and most other countries are falling hopelessly behind. The computation power needed to train cutting-edge AI models is so enormous that only a handful of organizations in the world can afford it. OpenAI spent hundreds of millions of dollars training GPT-4. Google and Meta are spending billions on their AI infrastructure. These aren't amounts that startups or smaller countries can match. This creates a global inequality problem that mirrors the domestic one. Countries that control AI technology will have enormous economic and strategic advantages over countries that don't. We're already seeing this. AI is being used for everything from drug discovery to financial modeling to military applications. Nations without advanced AI capabilities will become increasingly dependent on nations that have them, creating a new form of technological colonialism. And within countries that do have AI capabilities, the wealth concentration is stunning. The people who own significant shares in AI companies are becoming wealthy at a rate that makes previous fortunes look modest. When OpenAI was valued at over $80 billion in late 2023, that value didn't come from producing physical goods. It came from the potential to monetize AI capabilities that were developed using public research, open source contributions, and data that came from millions of unpaid contributors across the internet. Here's what's particularly troubling. The wealth being generated by AI often bears little relationship to the value being created for society. AI that helps radiologists detect cancer earlier creates enormous social value and might save countless lives. AI that optimizes ad placement to manipulate people into buying things they don't need creates private profit but questionable social value. Yet the latter often generates more revenue than the former, because our economic system rewards whatever people will pay for, not necessarily what's good for humanity. The winner-takes-all dynamic also means that mistakes and biases get amplified. If one company's AI learns to discriminate, say, giving worse loan terms to certain demographic groups, that discrimination gets baked into decisions affecting millions of people. And because these systems are so complex and proprietary, it's often impossible to detect or challenge the bias. You don't get to see why the algorithm rejected your loan application or didn't show you a job opportunity. We're creating a future where a tiny number of entities have godlike information and predictive capabilities about human behavior, while everyone else is essentially flying blind. That's not a recipe for a fair society. It's a recipe for unprecedented inequality and control. So, if the AI revolution is concentrating wealth and power in dangerous ways, what do we do about it? The good news is we're still early enough that we can shape how this plays out. The bad news is we need to act now, because the longer these systems become entrenched, the harder they'll be to change. First, we need to fundamentally rethink data ownership. Right now, when you create an account on any platform, you typically agree to terms of service that give the company broad rights to use your data. Most people never read these agreements, and they're written in legal language designed to obscure what you're actually agreeing to. We need a new legal framework where individuals have clear ownership of their personal data and can negotiate collectively about how it's used. Some economists have proposed a data dividend system, the idea that if companies profit from your data, you should get a share of that profit. It sounds radical, but it's really just applying basic property rights to the digital age. If someone used your property to make money, you'd expect compensation. Why should data be different? Alaska gives citizens a share of oil revenues. Norway's sovereign wealth fund shares resource profits with the population. We could do something similar for data. But data ownership is just the start. We also need to break up or regulate the monopolistic tendencies in the AI industry. This isn't about punishing success. It's about preventing the concentration of power that threatens both economic fairness and democratic governance. When a few companies control the information infrastructure that society depends on, they have too much power over public discourse, economic opportunity, and even political outcomes. Some countries are starting to move in this direction. The European Union has been the most aggressive, passing regulations like GDPR that give individuals more control over their data, and the AI Act that attempts to regulate high-risk AI applications. It's not perfect, but it's a start. The United States has been slower to act, partly because of the political power of tech companies, and partly because of ideology that's skeptical of regulation. But that's starting to change as people wake up to the risks. We also need to democratize access to AI capabilities. Right now, cutting-edge AI is effectively controlled by a handful of companies and institutions. But what if we created public AI infrastructure, computing resources available to researchers, small businesses, and citizens the way we have public libraries and public universities? Some of the most important breakthroughs in AI have come from publicly funded research. Why should all the economic benefits flow to private companies? Education is another crucial piece. We need to teach people how these systems work, not so everyone becomes an AI engineer, but so everyone understands what's happening when they interact with algorithms. Media literacy used to mean understanding how to read newspapers critically. Now it means understanding how recommendation algorithms shape what you see, how AI can generate convincing but false content, and how your data is being used. This should be taught in schools because the earlier people understand these systems, the better equipped they'll be to navigate them. We also need new forms of worker organizing for the algorithm economy. If we're all doing unpaid labor every time we use social media or train an AI through our behavior, maybe we need something like a data workers union, a collective organization that can negotiate on behalf of users about how their data is used and compensated. It sounds strange now, but so did factory workers organizing a century ago. Labor movements have always adapted to new economic realities. Finally, we need to have an honest conversation about what we want from AI. Do we want a technology that maximizes engagement and profit, or do we want a technology that improves human well-being? Do we want AI that concentrates power, or AI that distributes it? These are choices, not inevitabilities. The current path isn't the only path. The AI revolution is happening whether we like it or not. But who benefits from it? How fairly the wealth is distributed? How much control individuals have over their own data? Those are all choices we can still make. We're at a turning point. What we decide in the next few years will shape the economy for generations. The question is whether we'll wake up to what's happening in time to do something about it, or whether we'll look back in 20 years and wonder how we let a handful of companies capture almost all of the value from one of the most transformative technologies in human history. The revolution isn't just coming, it's here. The question is, whose revolution it will be.